Hey, everybody. Hello from the Chariot headquarters here in New York City on this still snowy and chilly day. We already have hundreds of you here ready to rumble right at noon Eastern, which we love to see. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll give it a minute or two here while people are still filing in. We're super excited for this announcement today. We've got so much to share with you. I know we've been building it up for almost 2 months now, so hopefully you all are excited to see the big reveal as well. I see people have already jumped into the chat introducing yourselves. Please keep doing that. We love to see where everyone is joining from, all these amazing organizations, all parts of the country. It is just so exciting that we get to share this moment with so many partners and great practitioners around the nonprofit sector. So thank you so much, everybody. My name is Mitch Stein. I will be kind of your MC and host for today as we introduce a lot of other speakers from the Chariot team. And we will give it one more minute as I know people are continuing to trickle in and join. But thank you all so much for being here. We are really excited to share this moment with you. Amazing. See so many great partners, folks that are part of the DAF fundraising report with us, folks I know activated on DAF Day. It's a nice reunion to get to bring everybody here. Amazing. Oh, I see Eugene from the center. Thank you for joining, Eugene. Appreciate it. All right, well, I know people will keep trickling in, which is great, but let's go ahead and get started because we've got a lot to get through today and a lot of people for you all to meet. So why don't we get started? Natalie, you want to cue up the slides? Amazing. Okay, so you are here today to learn about the new Chariot. And a lot of people have been messaging me and asking, what do you mean the new Chariot? Well, we mean a couple things. One, as you'll see today, we have a brand new brand and logo that you'll see across all these slides within our product and our website, which is also brand new today. We released an entirely new website and a brand new product experience that we're going to talk through today in a really, really important part of the nonprofit sector. So let's dive in. First, I want to just level set with everyone here that's joining. I know all of you are focused on DAFs and DAF giving. So what would you say is the first word that comes to mind when you think of donor advised funds? You can just drop it right in the chat. Love to hear what is top of mind for people, where you're at with this topic before we dive in. All right, anyone in the chat? Opportunity for sure, Megan. Lots of opportunity, untapped, available. All right, but I see it's not perfect, right? Oh, they're going in fast. Donor info hard to find, tricky to track and manage for sure, confusing. Yeah, we've got a lot of mixed experience, I'd say. Probably some folks on your team might love them, but others find that the actual experience of managing those gifts is really difficult. We hear this a lot where folks use words like cumbersome or chaos or nightmare in how they arrive. We're going to focus on all that today. So if you feel that way, you have some angst or reservations about DAF giving, you're in the right place. And we're really trying to solve them for you. So let's go ahead and jump in. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge that if you've joined a Chariot webinar before, you've probably heard from me because I generally have been leading these conversations. Today, I'm super excited because mostly will not be me speaking. You get to meet 10 other members of the Chariot team across all of our teams and functions, which is super exciting. Also have to give a shout out. There are folks not on the screen that are really critical to this effort today. We have Natalie on our marketing team that is helping with all the slides and production. And we have Sarah and Jack from our operations and partner team who are going to be jumping into the chat and answering all of your questions. So as you have them, they will be trying to get to them in the chat here. So please keep asking them as we go, and we'll try to have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So everyone here will be introducing themselves as we go along, and you'll be meeting way more folks behind the magic here at Chariot. So going over the agenda today, I mentioned we have a lot to cover. I'm going to spend a few minutes just reviewing what happened in 2025 from Chariot's perspective amongst our partners and give you the latest and greatest. But we want to spend the majority of the time talking about Chariot's next frontier and how we are helping everyone on your team love to have giving and really succeed with this process. So we'll give you the context and background there, do a walkthrough of exactly what we've built to help with these problems, and then wrap up with a view of the road ahead. Like, where is Chariot going next? And you'll hear directly from our founders about what Chariot is all about. So let's go ahead and jump in with that 2025 recap. It was a big year. The nonprofit space had a lot going on. One big theme for 2025 was definitely just that DAF giving was up across the board for people. The activity level was off the charts. But a couple of the big highlights for Chariot specifically, if we want to go to the next slide, we saw a huge expansion of DAF Pay over the course of 2025. We welcomed dozens of new partners. Here's just 12 of them that were some of the highlights in 2025, which meant thousands of new nonprofits benefiting from DAF Pay. We now have DAF Pay on over 70 partner platforms. And we say dozens, several dozen. And there's more to come in the pipeline in the next few months. So really hitting our goal or moving towards our goal of making DAF Pay ubiquitous, just like any other payment option that folks can be using DAF Pay to give right when they're inspired on your existing donation forms. And we expect to have a lot more progress on this in 2026. Will definitely be a big focus. Just last year, we saw DAF Pay giving volume up by 70% year over year. And we hope to even exceed that in 2026. So huge shout out to all of our partners on the fundraising platform side, all the amazing nonprofits taking advantage of this and seeing some really incredible records in 2025. The other big thing on the Chariot side internally was we just had some really exciting recognition from the broader industry starting to take note of this innovation in DAF giving. First of all, Time magazine named DAF Pay by Chariot one of the best inventions that they noticed in 2025. I have to give it a little anecdote. Most of the time you have to apply for these things. They just reached out to us out of the blue. We actually thought it was a spam outreach, and turned out that they really had found us through different donation forms and thought that it was an innovation worthy of mentioning in such a big publication. So we were really excited about that. The other recognition we had last year was being named one of Fast Company's most innovative companies of 2025. I think this just goes to show the focus and opportunity, like so many of you mentioned when it comes to DAF giving, is huge. And innovation in this space is so needed and going to be really impactful. And another area of innovation apart from our technology was growing the DAF Day movement. You know, it happened in October. We saw thousands of nonprofits participating, dozens of DAFs organizing, encouraging more giving, and just spreading the word. So we were just so excited. We also introduced the first ever DAF Day Awards and got to recognize some of the amazing work that nonprofits were doing to encourage more DAF giving and educate their donors about DAFs. So if folks are curious, that is on our blog, recapping some of the best activations. I definitely recommend that you take a look. The next big area of innovation that we got to introduce for the first time in 2025 was disbursements by Chariot. So this was our solution that we brought to the market in May to help grant makers send grant payments faster, more easily, and more securely. We ended up onboarding 12 partners in less than 7 months. And collectively, that group grants out over $450 million per year. And most exciting to me, because I want to see these gifts move more quickly to nonprofits, was that 83% of the grant volume that we handled in 2025 moved electronically. So we look forward to continuing to maintain that and move that forward with our grant making. Disbursements is an amazing solution for grant makers that are struggling with how they handle the complex process of getting grants to over 1.5 million nonprofits out there that they could be requested to pay by their fund holders. And it's so exciting to see folks adopting that quickly and seeing the impact it has on moving money to nonprofits faster and making it easier for them to see all that data in their portal. So this was a really exciting step forward for us. We expect to bring on more and more partners this year. And just a huge thank you to the partners that helped build this with us, especially the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation, the folks at Daffy, Endowment, and a few others that were really integral in helping to take that live. But we're talking about 2026. So I am excited, before we dive into our next frontier, to introduce two of our first speakers today from the Chariot team. So if we could go ahead and bring onto the stage Elon Packin and Drew Schneider. And would love to start off, Lone and Drew, if you could just share a little bit about yourselves and your role here at Chariot with all the folks watching.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mitch. So exciting to be here today. Hi, everybody. My name is Elon Packin. I lead the partnerships team here at Chariot, and I'm a former investment banker who realized life is much better when you're passionate about the positive impact that you can make every day if you go to a job that you love. At Chariot, I help make sure that every partnership that we form is a true win-win-win. We win, you win, and society wins. So outside of work, I'm passionate about physical and spiritual fitness. And I spend most of my free time with my wife and young kids.
Amazing. Thanks, Alon. And Drew, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, nice to see everybody. I'm Drew Schneider, one of the co-founders and chief product officers of Chariot. I have a background in human-centered design, so my passion is working deeply and diligently with our nonprofits for nonprofits, really getting into your workflows, understanding the pain points of this sector, how we can use design and user interfaces and technology to make problems into solutions. And we're really excited to tell you about our next frontier.
Amazing. And I can definitely rep to what Alon and Drew both said. They're super passionate, and you'll certainly hear that today as we talk about what's coming next. So Alon, why don't you kick off and sort of set the stage for us here when we talk about the next frontier? Natalie, if you could just move to the next slide there. So I just talked about disbursements, which was a huge advance that we got to enable with 12 partners. But there's something missing. Tell us what's quite not perfect yet for nonprofits.
Yeah, no, great question, Mitch. So this is your Chariot account today. And a reminder, any eligible nonprofit can go ahead and claim your Chariot Deposit account. In your account, you'll see these 12 forward-thinking and really innovative grant makers, some of the ones that Mitch kind of showed before. Now, when we launched disbursements, we quickly saw it was helpful beyond just donor-advised funds. That's why you'll also see here employee matching platforms like Groundswell, and daily giving platforms like Good Today. And we'll have even more grant makers added here in the coming weeks and months, which will go public in the next couple of months. But as we continue to work with our nonprofit partners, we really realized that there was still like a big problem with what was happening right here. It's really great having a dozen or even dozens of payment sources connected by default. That's fantastic. But we know there are thousands of third parties that are paying nonprofits. Including Groundswell, that's awesome. But what about Benevity and Cybergrants and Your Cause? Including Daffy, that's super cool. But what about Fidelity Charitable and NPT and Vanguard Charitable? Dallas Jewish Community Foundation, sure, that's great. But what about the 150 other Jewish community foundations and federations? Or even other religious-focused DAFs like National Christian Foundation, Signatory, or the American Muslim Community Foundation. And what's worse than just the sheer number of payment sources that nonprofits are still being forced to deal with is that each of these sources generates a totally new and unique workflow that development operations teams are expected to define and execute against effectively with little to no room for error. At Chariot, when we start galvanizing around the problem space, we do everything possible to get as close as possible to the people who are actually feeling that problem most acutely. Many of you have actually worked with us hand in hand, I'm sure some of the folks on this call. So over the last 18 months, we've been spending a ton of time with gift processors and advancement operations teams rolling up our sleeves and really digging in. And we thought, and Drew and I were talking about this, that for today's conversation, it would actually be helpful to do literally an illustrative example of just one mapping exercise we did with just one of our partners for just one of their workflows, just as an example. So Drew, you want to go through this together here on the next slide?
Yeah, let's do it.
So kind of kicking off, and we realize that, again, this is just one workflow, one example. It's not going to map exactly for every nonprofit, but again, to illustrate the point, let's say in this example, the nonprofit, they receive $5,000 to their bank account. So the first step is they get that notification, and then they have to go to their bank account and download the bank statement, and then share that with their gift processing team to say, hey, we got this new deposit.
Yeah, and one of the things I'll add here is even when those $5,000 land in your bank account, sometimes they come with ACH IDs or these sort of mysterious codes. So you don't necessarily know which DAF provider it came from. You kind of have to go for a scavenger hunt to figure out who was the source of that inbound deposit.
Exactly right. And then when the gift processing team actually does get the bank statement, they still need to triage it internally, because often one person maybe handles Fidelity, but someone else handles Benevity, and someone else maybe handles a different payer. So they triage it amongst the gift processing team. And then whoever gets assigned, now it's their job. They have to take that, go to their spreadsheet, find the username and password for the portal they're logging into, log in, and export the donation data for that match that deposit they received.
And something we found with our nonprofit partners we've worked with is the data is not always there. Just because you have a payment, that doesn't mean that the data is readily available. You might have to wait a day or two for that data to become available or that email to be sent. And so it's not happening at the same time, which can definitely lead to some confusion.
Yeah, Andrew, it actually reminds me of the story. In this case, the person spoke about, they had the TFA for their phone to this portal. And so that day it was fine, but they're like, I was on vacation a month ago, and the team had to go crazy trying to get me to share the TFA so that the person who was covering for me could actually just log into the portal to download the data.
Alone, if I can jump in, we had someone come up to us at a conference, actually in tears, telling us a story about how they had a teammate who was in critical care in the hospital, who was the person that owned their TFA account. And they couldn't get into a major workplace giving platform for months at a very large university, literally in tears, talking about how they couldn't do this reconciliation, how they couldn't get the funds over just because of how complex that one process was.
It's sometimes it's mind-boggling, the heroes that are going through this process. At that point, when they do get the data, then they have to assign the batch IDs, because remember, later on, they're gonna have to tie this all back to that bank statement that kicked this process off. And then once they've assigned the batch ID, that gift processor is responsible for going in and assigning the constituent IDs and the campaign codes. This was related to a nonprofit that does peer-to-peer events. So a lot of campaign coding to do associated with the gift. And then once they're finally done doing all the coding, as an extra bonus step, they have to remember to go in and take a screen grab of the portal and save it into their SharePoint so that they didn't lose track of the actual artifact for the donation that they just received.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone's familiar with screenshots, but usually the naming conventions all over the place. We've seen file folders like in a Google Drive of just miscellaneous screenshots that nobody's really able to decipher. And so it's definitely a bit of a nightmare.
Absolutely. And actually, even after that point, the gifts are not even in the place they need to go, which is the CRM for the gift processor. In this case, if you go back a slide there, Natalie, in this case, the nonprofit actually they had a rule where if it was less than a certain number of donations, they would do it manually. And only if it was over a certain size would they deal with the process of a batch upload, which has its own sort of complications that we won't spend the time today. So that person now had to manually go into the CRM and actually code these gifts one for one. So it's in the CRM. And once they did all that, that's when they went back to finance and said, okay, I'm done with my part. You guys can do your steps next. And the thing is that finance team who gets that signal, I think it was a Teams message they sent, was like, well, we still can't actually start because I need every one of the bank statements to finish their job, not just that one line item for that one $5,000 deposit. But once they are confirmed, everyone has done it, that's when they would go back to the CRM and download all the gifts based on that batch ID, and use that as the kind of record to create their journal entry and upload the journal entry into their ERP, and then use the bank feed and upload that as well. So that way they can have everything reconciled. And then of course, last but not least, you think you're done, but at the end of the month, they have to make sure and check everything so that the books can actually close, and make sure that with all these manual steps that happened across organization, just for this one workflow for one portal, there was no fat finger or issue or any other mistake that they have to kind of do the runaround to figure out what happened.
Yeah, and I'd say we have yet to see a nonprofit who has mastered this process without having some sort of end of month reconciliation check or mistake. So, yeah.
I think the thing is, and this is just one crazy workflow we want to give as an example, but if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, this problem is multiplied by dozens of different portals that they have to deal with, dozens of providers, just for that one individual nonprofit. And then when you zoom out further and think about our collective community of nonprofits, we're talking about thousands of different payers and different processes that they have to deal with. We're giving that one example of logging into that one portal, but maintaining a list of all the portals you have to log into isn't just knowing which ones, but it also means you need a list of all the passwords that go associated with those portals. And of course, I hope everyone is saving any kind of password file like that in a very secure spot. Obviously, the security considerations around access to that data or those funds. Some grant makers don't even have a portal. And in those cases, maybe they'll send you an email with a CSV file attached instead. You have other grant makers in that email, instead of a CSV file, where they're going to include an attachment of a grant letter as a PDF that you need to go and download and extract the data from that PDF file manually into an Excel sheet or into your CRM. And still, there's other providers who are still mailing checks, which is crazy based on the number of those that get lost or stolen in the mail. And that could lead to, we're talking about weeks or months of delays if the gift even gets recovered at all in certain instances. Of course, even after you do that first part of wrangling these different portals and getting the data, none of those data files are going to be in the same format. They're not going to be structured the same way. And so then you have the job of cleaning up and organizing all the different data structures just to get started on the unique campaign and constituent coding work for your specific organization. It's honestly something, and the title of this slide, we borrowed from one of our nonprofit partners. She called it the nightmare of donation management. And honestly, I was like, that hits the nail on the head. It's such a fitting title because it is a nightmare. It's a nightmare to be expected to manage this mess, a mess that operating nonprofits themselves had no part in creating. It's at no fault of their own, yet the weight of it is falling on the gift processing teams every single day. Teams that are in fact chronically understaffed, they're chronically underappreciated, and they're constantly being told and even expected to do more with even less. And honestly, beyond just the tactical work demands, it's simply not really fair. It's not fair. When you look at what's happening, there's no dedicated place for gift processors to do their specific work. Natalie, if you show the next slide here, especially when it comes to offline gifts, which still make up the vast majority of gifts nonprofits receive today, that box in the middle, there is no home for that work. I mean, if you think about database teams that need to keep track of every donor, they need to know who that donor is, how they've engaged with the organization in the past, how they want it to be communicated with. Well, these teams have CRMs. They're no longer dealing with the spreadsheets like they were 30 years ago. And for finance teams that need to keep track of every dollar and accurately close the books every month, well, those teams, the finance teams, they have ERPs. But for the gift processing teams who want to streamline and automate their work and they're being forced to string together a combination of various tools like Excel or Google Sheets, like SharePoint or Google Drive, and internal communication tools like email, Slack, Teams, and phone calls, simply just to get their day-to-day job done. And I'm talking about the hours and hours spent doing this manual, often tedious work. What does that actually mean? It means that these passionate, hardworking professionals are not instead spending their time harnessing valuable insights or stewarding new and existing donors for deeper engagement with your mission. The underlying fact is that gift processing is a uniquely nonprofit problem. And for far too long, it's been totally overlooked from the technology perspective. In this case, hoping that a for-profit company focused on the for-profit sector will invent a solution for corporations that the nonprofit sector could then adopt and modify after the fact, it simply won't cut it. That may have worked for CRMs and it may have worked for ERPs, but it just simply won't work here. But just because gift processing is a uniquely nonprofit problem, that does not make it any less important to be solved. At Chariot, we've never been ones to take a problem that exists today and simply accept that it'll always be that way. That is literally just not in our DNA of who we are as an organization. And honestly, the reason we love being 100% dedicated to building financial infrastructure exclusively for the nonprofit sector is exactly because of that. It's because we know that you, the nonprofit industry, you don't accept the world as it is today either. Our nonprofit partners, and we've had many come to the office and we speak to them all the time at conferences and at events, they inspire us every single day with compelling visions of the future that they're working tirelessly to bring to life day in and day out. We're talking about a future without Alzheimer's or cancer or heart disease. It's a future where sick kids are being healed and hungry people are being fed. It's a future where every veteran has the support that they deserve and every child has access to world-class education. And so together, we wanted to challenge ourselves here at Chariot to empower the unsung heroes of the nonprofit sector, the gift processing teams, to also look into the future and create a vision, but not necessarily a vision for the entire world, but simply a vision for what their day-to-day work can look like when it was optimized with the cutting-edge technology that we know exists today. Together, we joined our gift processing partners and our team, and we actually started to say, what if? What if you didn't have to log into a dozen portals every single week and month? What if you didn't have to open another check ever again? What if you never had to manually code another gift ever again? What if you never had another end-of-month reconciliation headache and you could close your books literally at the same time that the month ended? What if you could get all your donations into one portal and they could be instantly coded and immediately synced to your database of record?
All right, people have been dying in the chat to say, all right, we want the solution already. We understand the problem, but thank you, Alon, for illustrating that so well. And this is the time where we get to officially, for the first time ever, not just at Chariot, but in the industry, introduce, drum roll please, Natalie. Introducing ever. Next slide. Gift processing platform. That means everything that Alon just mentioned, that future, can happen right within the Chariot platform. And this animation is just showing you a few of the key steps in that process of what a gift processing platform will look like for organizations. And Drew is going to give us the high-level overview before we dive into the key product features. So we couldn't be more excited to introduce the gift processing platform. Drew, take it away.
Yeah, as Mitch said, really excited to introduce and start talking about Chariot as this first ever gift processing platform. When we step back and really break down how we're solving the problems that gift processors face, we kind of think of it in three core pieces. The first is unification. This means bringing all of those disparate sources Alon was talking about into one single portal. Instead of juggling logins, inboxes, file drives, spreadsheets across multiple teams, Chariot unifies your data and payments into one standard structure all in one place. The second piece of the puzzle is enrichment. Through rules or AI-powered agents, Chariot can automatically classify and add details to every single gift as it comes in. So no more manually adding constituent IDs, appeal codes, campaign codes. All of that is taken care of for you. And because Chariot's built to work with your existing workflows, your team can assign work, leave notes, and cross-collaborate with each other all within one unified system. And the last piece here is syncing. That's making sure everything moves seamlessly from Chariot into your external systems, whether that's through our user-friendly API or our dashboard via custom export templates or direct integrations with third parties. And I'm going to leave it to the rest of the team to go into each of these three buckets in more depth, but this is the core of how we think about Chariot as the first gift processing platform. Alon mentioned this a lot. One thing I think that is really important to call out is a core building principle at Chariot for all of us that we feel so deeply is to build for nonprofits with nonprofits. We've been working on this for over a year and a half, hand in hand with our incredible partners. And so today, excited to share that we have dozens of leading nonprofits that are already using the system, helping shape how this platform works in a real world gift processing environment. I saw one of the comments here in the thread was saying, gift processors often don't feel empowered to go to their supervisors or managers because they feel like the vendors they're working with don't understand the problem. And that's exactly what we're trying to get ahead of here. We've worked diligently with these nonprofit organizations to build this platform alongside them. And so what you're seeing today is just a first step. We're going to keep building with the organizations that we trust and keep expanding our footprint here. And so it goes without saying, but we're excited to say that gift processors finally have a home with Chariot. Alon alluded to, database managers having a CRM, finance teams have an ERP, and gift processors can now say, I have Chariot. And we're excited to work with you, get your organization onboarded to gift processing with Chariot so you can focus on higher level work that moves your mission and your visions forward.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Alon and Drew, for sharing all that insight. Appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for the questions. Please keep them coming. Just two things I wanted to call out that I saw is that this is totally distinct from DAFPay. This is all the gifts that come from these different sources, not necessarily something associated with DAFPay. So good question there. And next, we're going to bring out two other speakers. But thank you, Alon and Drew, for helping out here and introducing that so well. So we'll bring to the stage next two of our other teammates. We'll have Neil and Britt join us. Awesome. And if you all don't mind doing some quick introductions, I would love for Britt, why don't you start off and let everybody know your role at Chariot and what you're up to.
Hey everyone, I'm Britt, also on the partnerships team here at Chariot in the higher ed space, working with colleges and universities to advance their mission. I have the great pleasure of doing that with all shapes and sizes here at Chariot. So I'm super a little bit more about the gift processing platform, and y'all could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, so we really appreciate that.
Amazing. And Neil, you're next.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Neil, and I'm one of the founding engineers here at Chariot. I've been at Chariot for over 3 years and lead the sources team here. Most of the work I do here surrounds our external payment sources and ingesting data from many different places.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. So, Britt, why don't we go ahead and jump in with you to help us set the stage on what we mean by the first piece of our gift processing platform when it comes to unifying. So why don't you walk through what you're talking to nonprofits every day? What are you hearing them share when it comes to the current state of trying to wrangle data from all these different sources?
Yeah, I think mostly what I hear is it's dozens and dozens of portals. And one director of advancement service said, it feels like there's a new one every day that I have to create a bespoke work.
I think we're losing Britt a little bit, but I'll go ahead and jump in here. Britt, if you want to try to find another spot where the Wi-Fi might be a little bit better. But I think what Britt was just getting to is that folks that we're speaking with every day are monitoring dozens and dozens of these payment sources. I mean, Alon Drew went through one specific example for one payment source and one workflow that people need to manage. But that is replicated across dozens of places. Different people might have to monitor different ones, and they're managing those workflows over and over again. We also then, not only are the workflows different, actually what they receive is completely different, right? So they're having to wrangle data coming from different places, emails that might have data in them, a CSV file, PDFs, physical letters that come in the mail, that all requires a different process. The data is totally different. And then they need to tie that all out between money, the actual funds that arrive, and the specific gift details behind it. And so we talked about the trouble reconciling at the end of the month and tying out your bank. So that is all a huge struggle. I'm going to bring Britt back on stage because we look like we've got her in a better place with their Wi-Fi. Britt, I just gave that high level overview, but if there's any other examples you want to share here, or we can jump into how Chariot helps.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add with working with our nonprofit partners, it's kind of funny. You talk to folks and you ask, what's your process? Walk me end to end how you process these exact gifts. And the first answer they'll give me is kind of that surface level. It's not too bad. And then you have them actually sit and walk you through everything. And we pop on Teams for this. We go into this, long Excel sheet to get this passcode. And then there's that investigative work that I hear about a lot as well. So maybe we don't know what's going on with this deposit. So we have to loop back to the finance team. All of that really starts to add up. So helping folks understand and unpack that and let them know it does not have to be that way is one of the best parts of talking about what we're doing here at Chariot.
Awesome. So let's jump into exactly what the Chariot platform does to alleviate these issues. So Britt, talk us a bit about these key stages here.
Yeah, so the first thing is Chariot gives you just one place to consolidate and auto reconcile all of your data. I like to jokingly call it the portal to end all portals, but it's bigger than that. Because we're also getting those deposits, we're able to do that auto reconciliation. We can enrich those donations as well. And then the second piece is all of the different sources, we're able to ingest that data and standardize it. So every time you get that CSV, you don't need to spend the time cleaning it up, getting the columns into the right format that you need to get it into your systems of record. You can build all of these standard templates so that every time the data flows into the platform, it's in a way that's useful to you, and you don't have to complete these kind of manual steps each time with each payer. And I want to say the last piece there is that reconciliation piece, right? So when I say the portal, I don't want people to get confused that it's just the gift details. It's more than that. So every single one of those gift details are going to be tied out in the platform with a deposit. And I'm so excited that Neil is here to talk about it, because when I demo this with nonprofits, it feels like magic. So I'm excited for us to get into the technical piece of how that all works.
Absolutely. And just one quick thing I want to call out here, because this is a new concept for people on that next page, Natalie, the sources, the payment sources. So saw a couple questions come up about this. Your standard Chariot account that folks already have and use, where our partners are actively sending funds themselves, those are your default sources. You're automatically enabled with those. You don't need to do anything else. For upgraded Chariot accounts, if you have a subscription with Chariot, you've got access to bring in all these additional sources into your account. And that includes everything that comes through PayPal, right? There's a lot of different DAFs that use that. Everything that comes through Ren and Pinkaloo, a lot of different DAFs use that. And we even have a digital mailbox feature where even things like mailed checks can come directly into your Chariot portal. So Neil's going to talk to us a bit about how that works. Just wanted to distinguish and make that clear for everybody. But Neil, next, let's talk through a couple of the key technical innovations that underlie how all this is, how the magic, as Britt said, is possible.
Yeah, for sure. So every time a payment is received to your Chariot account, we do the heavy lifting of getting the data for you. Whether that's from a portal, an email, or an image, we can adjust the data and tie it to the payments in your Chariot account. Next, regardless, Natalie, could you go to the next slide, please? Regardless of your source, we standardize the data into one consistent data model so that nonprofits don't have to do the work of wrangling data from so many different sources. Yeah. And finally, it's important to point out that we can also utilize this process for mail items. Our system receives the mail, opens and scans it, deposits the check, extracts the data, and then converts it into our standard data model.
Amazing. So as you can see, we can go through it quickly, but there is a ton of work behind the scenes that makes all of that possible across these different payment sources. But so that from your experience, you are just seeing everything in one place, the same format and same structure. Neil and Britt, thank you so much for joining and walking us through that first piece of the gift processing platform. Really appreciate it. Next up, we'll bring a couple other teammates onto the stage to walk us through the next step in the gift processing platform, which is how you then work with that data and enrich it. So Shoshana and Harry, do you mind introducing yourselves to everybody? Shoshana, do you want to kick us off here?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Shoshana. I'm on the product team at Chariot. My background's in digital health, and I'm really passionate about making technology that solves real problems for real people. At Chariot, I get to work every day on the ground with nonprofits, really understanding your workflows and figuring out how to improve Chariot to meet the specific needs and pain points of our nonprofit partners.
Hi, everyone. My name's Harry. I'm on the engineering team here at Chariot. I joined the team just over a year ago, and I've been largely focused on building out some of our enrichment workflows. Prior to Chariot, I was a couple other startups, and I have a background in journalism. So that's it for me.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much for joining this section here, and can't imagine anyone better suited. As Shoshana mentioned, she's literally hand in hand with gift processors every day, understanding their existing flows and how to improve them in the Chariot system. So Shoshana, why don't you start us off kind of like Britt did earlier? Tell us how people are doing this enrichment step today in their current systems, and some of the biggest problems and pain points that presents.
Yeah, of course. So, as Britt and Neil mentioned, you get all your donation data, one place, one data model, but your work's not done there. You have to figure out how to get these donations into your CRM. So the first big piece here is figuring out, okay, who is this donor? Has this person given to our organization before, or are they a totally new person? And this can be pretty hard because DAF information is often incomplete. So you might get a gift from Mr. and Mrs. Smith, John and Joan Smith, Mr. John Smith, or maybe you don't even get a name, you just get the Smith Family Fund. And so there's a lot of work involved of searching your CRM, using the address, contact info, previous giving history, any other information you can kind of glean to determine if this is an existing user. Once you've identified the user, the next step is applying your specific campaign codes and tags. So you can parse the donor notes and purpose. If it's, let's say, a major donor, maybe they have a steward who has additional context. You can use other clues like location, things like that, to see if it's for a particular event or cause. And this is challenging because nonprofits we work with have sometimes hundreds or even thousands of codes, and these codes are changing frequently. Lastly, the big pain point here is just there's not a single source of truth. So, information comes from these different sources, and the nonprofit needs to keep a record of what's been coded, what needs to get coded, what's already in the CRM. So most teams that I've worked with have a solution to this using a shared spreadsheet, a master donation log, and they'll use color coding and emails back and forth to figure out who's coding which donation, has it been approved, is it ready for the CRM?
Awesome. So thank you for walking through all that. The state is not awesome. It sounds like a ton of work that people are repeating and having to do every day, but thank you for walking through that so clearly. So tell us a bit about how this gets transformed once someone is using the Chariot system for enriching.
Yeah, so the Chariot processing tool is really a custom-built tool for streamlining the process for gift processing, saving you time and headaches. So here's like some of the main ways that we do that. Our AI agent allows you to teach Chariot as if you were teaching a new employee, all your business rules, custom logic, anything needed to code donations according to your specific nonprofit practices, and ingest the data needed to code this effectively. So your thousands, hundreds of thousands of constituent codes, campaign IDs, things like that. It then automatically uses the data in the donations when they come in and your guidelines to identify the donors, tag the campaigns, and do this coding step for you, which you can then review and approve as needed. The next step is the sort of custom tables and views. So Chariot allows you to build out personalized views to map the steps in your workflow. So as I talk to nonprofits, each nonprofit has a slightly different workflow, and the Chariot dashboard allows a lot of customization to really tailor it to your specific workflow. Lastly, this centralized space allows you to coordinate and communicate around gift processing directly in the dashboard. So you can assign team members to donations. You can even set up rules to auto-assign based on DAF provider or donation amount. And you can also use internal notes to communicate key pieces of information to other team members.
Thank you so much for walking through all that, Shoshana. Super helpful. Obviously, and then see some questions coming up in the chat too about, does this actually automate these things that we're supposed to do, we're doing today? Yes, and it's only possible with some really cool technology behind the scenes that are enabling this. So Harry, would love for you to walk through some of the key pieces there on what is the engineering team at Chariot, what have you all been cooking up to make these capabilities possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to walk through some of these enrichment workflows. So part of the dashboard is the donations page, which you see here is going to give you a unified view of all of your Chariot donations. So this view will allow you to search and filter your donations. For instance, find all donations that are greater than $10,000, or find all donations from the past month that came from Benevity. So within this donations page, you can take these filters and you can create what's called a view, which represents a shared saved set of filters that you can come back to later. So for instance, if you're often interacting with a subset of that data, it's really helpful to save a view to come back to later. Another core concept in this area is called properties. These are custom fields that you can add to any donation. So they could be text fields, they could be pick list of values, or any other field like a date or a checkbox. And you can create views that contain filters on those properties as well. If you've ever used a tool like Notion, it's very similar. You kind of extend this core table with that additional functionality directly in Chariot. The next step, if we could go to the next slide here, is to create policies to automatically encode your gifts for you. So what you'll do here is you'll let an AI agent take over the coding of those donations for you. So for instance, let's say you have a custom property that you want to apply to all of your donations from Fidelity. You can run a rule that will automatically enrich new donations with that data. The initial release of this feature is even going to let you upload a CSV for the agent to search through when making those decisions. So for instance, if you have a donor list and you want our system to automatically tag your donations based on that list, we can have the policy do that for you. So the engineering team is really excited to debut this feature. We think it's going to save gift processors a ton of time.
Amazing. And yeah, as you can sort of see in the screen, you literally type out how you do your work today and set that rule and implement it. It's just so cool to see in action. Thank you, Shoshana and Harry, so much for walking through this piece. Really appreciate all of your insights and just glad you could join us. Next, we have the third and final core step in the gift processing platform, which we're going to bring two other teammates to the stage. If you could welcome Brielle and Julia. Brielle, why don't you start us off by introducing yourself?
Yeah, so excited to be here. Hi, everybody. I'm Brielle. I'm on the partnerships team at Chariot. I've spent my whole career working with nonprofit organizations. I spent about a decade at CCS Fundraising before joining the team at FreeWill, who is actually one of our amazing fundraising platform partners. And now I get to speak with all of you. It's amazing to see so many passionate, really thoughtful nonprofit professionals on the call. So super excited to be here today.
Amazing. Julia?
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Julia from the engineering team. I joined Chariot a little over a year ago and have worked on some of our compliance and onboarding systems that many of you have probably seen when you first signed up for a Chariot deposit account. I've also been involved in some of our features that help you get data out of Chariot and into other systems that we're about to get into in a little more detail.
Amazing. So thank you so much. Brielle, to kick off here on this last step of this syncing problem, I'd love to understand what you're hearing from the nonprofits you're talking to every day about the challenges of managing this data movement. Once you were able to wrangle all the data from different sources, do your coding and whatnot, and then how do you get it into the other places that it needs to go? What does that process look like today without Chariot?
Yeah, such a good question. And we've touched on it a little bit today, but it's a lot of manual work. Gift processors are manually adjusting the CSV file, right? So we've all had the first and last name are one field on the spreadsheet, but it has to be two fields in the CRM. So they're building macros, creating different spreadsheets to actually get it into their CRM. And it just takes a ton of time. I spoke with a head of development operations yesterday who was like, my team has been under siege by everybody else asking, when will this be in the system? When will the soft credits be coded there? And it just was taking a ton of time because it's year end and it's manual. So manual, and then it's a different process for each of these different payers. So we, some organizations will build out a whole specific process for Benevity, but that does not address the process for Your Cause or cyber grants. So just a huge, huge area of pain and opportunity.
Absolutely. So we see people struggling with this. What would they have to look forward to if they switch to using Chariot to handle this part of the gift processing process?
Yeah, and it's fun to see some folks who are already using it in the chat. So we're building out direct integrations right into, oh no, that was right, Natalie, that next slide. We're building out direct integrations to automatically sync into your CRM or your accounting software. we're also releasing publicly available APIs, so your IT team can link it right into your systems and they can talk to each other. And then I'm going to give Julia full credit for what I think is one of the coolest pieces of the platform, that you can create your own custom exports in the Chariot dashboard mapped to what you need them to be, because we're very used to, in a lot of different portals, the spreadsheet that you download is the spreadsheet that you download. Here you can create custom CSV files mapped to your CRM, your accounting software, your analytics tools, really whatever you need.
Amazing. So as you mentioned, the power here is really in the technical capabilities. So next, Julia, I'd love for you to talk us through, particularly this last piece that Brielle was just mentioning on the custom exports. Like, what does that actually mean functionally, and how does that work technically on the back end?
Sure. So by default, all of your donation data in Chariot can be exported to a CSV file with a set of fixed columns. So things like IDs for the donation or deposit, donor field names, the gift amount. But the format that you get from this default export might not match what you need to upload it to your CRM or to continue your gift processing workflows. So our custom export template feature lets you define what columns and data you need in your export. It's very easy to set up. You could upload a sample of what you bulk upload to your CRM, or you could just start from scratch. And then you can create columns. You can remove columns from our default export. You can rename them. Some ways we've seen nonprofits utilize this already is maybe reformatting dates. Maybe you want month, day, year. Maybe you want to write out January 28th, 2026. Another thing we've seen is creating a new column for sub-designations that come through on peer-to-peer donations. That's not really something the default template elevates, but maybe that's something your organization wants as a top-level column. And then another thing we've seen is sensible defaults. So for some where donor information is missing, instead of leaving it blank, you could add a sensible default like unknown. So those are just some of the ways that you can customize this template to make it really work for what your organization needs and not be locked into the rigidity of our default template.
Awesome. Super powerful. If anyone's ever had to try to change something from first and last name in one cell and make it two different cells for a different system and done that manually, setting it up here and can be executed for you every time is really incredible. The last piece that I want to make sure we hit on, Julia, is the fact, and I saw some questions about this too, how this works with other systems, is the fact that we do have this public API that folks can do their own work to integrate in their own ways. Tell us a little bit about what that means and how powerful that is.
Yeah, these are great for organizations that don't want to work with export files and they have enough technical expertise to build out their own workflows on top of the data that Chariot is unifying and enriching for you. So our gift processing APIs give you access to the donation data, the deposit data, some of the enrichment that you might do, and you can build your own workflows to integrate directly with your CRM. You could really do whatever you want, choose your own adventure in terms of getting this data out of Chariot and into your own system or the next system down the line.
Amazing. So that's it, folks, the end-to-end process here. We got the technical view from some of our amazing engineers and also a lot of our partnership folks. So thank you, Brielle and Julia, for walking through that with us. And appreciate you joining. And thank you all. Keep the questions coming in the chat. I know we've got a lot to cover, but we can definitely follow up and give you more information. But before we leave today, I want to bring on two of our co-founders, our CEO and COO, Aaron Kahana and Salo Sarfati, to talk to us a bit about where this all started and where it's going. And if you're new to Chariot or you haven't talked to the founders before, I thought it'd be a great way to wrap up this conversation to hear directly from them. So why don't you start off by introducing yourselves?
Sure, I can start. Thanks, Mitch. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm Aaron, one of the co-founders and COO of Chariot. At Chariot, I spend my time on everything except for, I'd say, our product and engineering side of the house. That could be anything from working on DAF and nonprofit partnerships, operations, and continuing to grow the Chariot team. I've been involved actually in the nonprofit space for over a decade, having founded a food insecurity charity and doing a bike ride every year, 180 miles for Bike for Chai. I'm very grateful for our nonprofit partners and to be continuing to innovate in this space. And I'll hand it to Salo.
Hi, everyone. I'm Salo. I'm one of the co-founders of Chariot and CEO. Thank you all for coming, as Aaron said. A little bit of background about myself. I'm originally from Caracas, Venezuela, and I'm a software engineer by trade. I like to tell people that if you take 3 concentric circles, one of them being engineering, the other one economics, and the last one philanthropy, and that overlap is where my interests lie. And it's been a dream to be working with the nonprofits that I've been supporting my entire life. And we're very excited to continue to do that in the future. So we want to take a step back and let you all know the founding story of Chariot, how we got to where we are, and then what's the North Star that drives us forward. So I'll start by describing a little bit about our founding story, which is an interesting one from my perspective. Since I've been in middle school, I've been donating 10% of my income to charity. And then when I went to college, I ended up being roommates with Aaron, who also had a very similar principle of donating a percentage of his income to charity. Our late night conversations was around how do we stay organized around this philanthropic goal, and how do we make decisions about who to give to, why, and all those hard questions when it comes to philanthropy. Fast forward, we graduated college, we all went to our respective jobs, but we kept trying to build philanthropic tools behind the scenes. Me, Aaron ended up working with Drew, and that's how we met our third co-founder. And long story short, it led us to learn about donor advised funds, which are excellent vehicles to organize your philanthropy. So we set one up for ourselves, and we got our friends to open up donor advised funds and put 10% of our income into these accounts. But then every time we went to a charity's website, we saw we can pay with Apple Pay, Google Pay, PayPal, but there was no easy way to check out with a donor advised fund. And that's why 3.5 years ago, we launched DAF Pay, which is our first product that makes it very easy for donors to give via their DAF directly on your website. And we didn't stop there. When I was in college, I learned in my engineering entrepreneurship class, there was this quote that said, follow the fish. And I didn't really understand what that meant. But later on, I learned that means to go very, very deep into the details. And if you go into the details, that's where all the treasure is found. And what we noticed after launching DAF Pay is that the way the money was moving was outdated. Donor advised funds and other grant makers were struggling on how to pay charities efficiently. And then the nonprofits were struggling on how to gift process these gifts efficiently. And that's why last year we launched Disbursements, which was our product for grant makers to pay nonprofits. And this year and today, you're hearing about gift processing, the first ever platform that lets nonprofits efficiently process their inbound revenue. And I'll pass it over to Aaron to talk about our principles as to how we go about building technology.
Yeah, solid. I think from the very beginning, there were a few principles that we were unwilling to compromise on. The first one is care. 4 years ago, everything started from deeply caring about the connection to nonprofits and wanting to drive more generosity and success for these organizations. I know Alon spoke about that earlier as well. And that also means we prioritize security and compliance above all else. If we get that wrong, nothing else matters. The second principle, in addition to care, is innovation. So we never wanted to create a new or a better version of an existing tool. We're lucky to have an incredible technical team, some of whom you've met today. And from day one, our goal has been to tackle the hardest problems, the ones that didn't have existing solutions, and to make category creating technology. And the third principle is collaboration. We've spoken about that today a little bit, but not only have we worked hand in hand with nonprofits and partners to build everything at Chariot, but our solutions are fundamentally network-based. They're made better and more helpful with each additional stakeholder that is part of Chariot. So I think those three principles have really guided the decisions we've made, and they're exactly what led us to build this next chapter of Chariot.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Well, we're coming up on time closely, so I'd love for Salo to wrap us up here and just let us know, what do you think people should know about Chariot? If they've listened to this whole thing, they might not be familiar. What's next? What do you want people to take away?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important for people to understand what's our North Star, what guides the direction that we take. And I often say the phrase close the loop, which is like close the feedback loop, which means how can we create the fastest feedback loop to move generosity to impact as quickly as possible. And our thesis is that by connecting every donor, nonprofit, and platform together, we create new feedback loops that make the best nonprofits grow and achieve their vision statements. And so our vision is to work on the infrastructure that lets nonprofits achieve their visions. And if we take a step back, it's also very important to understand why that matters. So if you all read the news, you know how many problems our society is facing today. And that's not unique to today. If you dial back time, we've always had to solve problems as a society. And the for-profit sector is incredible at growing the pie to solve some of these problems. But because of economic externalities and market failures, that pie is not always evenly distributed, or there's gaps where people are left behind. And that's where the nonprofit sector comes in, to solve those issues. And here at Chariot, we think of ourselves as enablers to let you all do the hard work of solving these hard problems to make a better society. And so we take that responsibility very seriously, as Aaron was mentioning. And we're incredibly excited to continue working on that infrastructure to let you all achieve your visions. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Well, thank you both. We just want to thank everybody for coming and also let you know that this is now available via waitlist. So please feel free, if you're excited about the first ever gift processing platform. Sarah's going to drop the link directly into the chat here for you, but you can join the waitlist right now. We will send this via email to everybody who joined, and also the details on the details for our next webinar, which will be coming up in February. So these two QR codes are here. The top one specifically for joining the waitlist if you're curious to learn more and enable the gift processing platform. And the second here is for our February webinar on what to have your eye on for DAF fundraising in 2026. And we appreciate everybody joining. Thank you so much.